It's the things that go bump in the back of your mind. Heartbeat so sick, you press rewind. Replay, repeat, let me hear that one more time. Diabolical beat taking over sublime. You're now listening to the sounds of the devil's swing. Sit back, relax, and the fear it brings. The lyrics so dope, the sound so sweet. Melody and harmony on track to defeat. Now, how that song go again? Oh, I know how it goes. It's like finding out all of your friends is foes. It's like finding out most of your family is them, and then finding out the love of your life was pretend. All wishing and hoping for your fall from grace. The main one to claim saint is the sinister case. Word curses subconscious since the day you were born. Gaslit love bomb so your spirit is torn. They love you to death and they hate you to life. They prey on your wealth and rejoice in your strife. With the lawn so leafy and the grass so green, the source of the hiss can go unseen. When your energy's slow, when your money is low, but you're doing all you can to make it grow. When your love so deep, but you fall so flat, and the energy you give never makes it back. There were cues in your life telling you you're the best, so you work hard, yet somehow you can't manifest. Then you play hard to somehow fit in with the rest, yet alone in the crowd, still sad and depressed. These are the breaks that can damn a man to wild and wander in a barren land, but you can stop the track and cut the song, power play, and press along, 'cause you're a general, many wanna test, never all gonna put ye to rest. General with the bruck of the sword, swing pon them hearts with the word of the Lord. You're a general, many wanna test, never all gonna put ye to rest. General with the bruck of the sword, swing pon them hearts with the word of the Lord. Whoop, whoop, that's the spiritual police. Whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the beat. Knock, knock on the door while your enemies snore in a beautiful nightmare about your defeat. It was just when they thought that their work was done. They could sit back, relax, and enjoy the fun. They could sit back and laugh at the chosen one. Now they're staring down the barrel of the rabbit's gun. Karma aims long and it don't aim wrong. They may try to dodge away from the spray of the song, but the spirit like ether, silent creeper implode in the cells of their mind till their life explodes. They became a casualty of their own resistance, an instance it takes from the decisions they make. A spiritual criminal against God and man is a prisoner of war by the sleight of his hand. So now they're stuck in an evil clutch. They want to confess how they love you so much, but really profess how their spirit is tossed and need to repent for their soul is lost. But this is the fate that's divinely ordered. You just mind your biz and drink your water, 'cause the devil is a sacred hoarder. Take the narrow path across the border to your promised land. Most don't understand. It's a shadow band, none but the righteous can see the way out of darkness and into light. You must be blessed to have the sight. Remember, but for the grace of God, there go I. So take no joy when your enemy dies. Instead, rejoice that your soul is wise. Choose life, the eternal prize, 'cause you're a general. Many wanna test. General, wanna put ye to rest. General with the bruck of the sword, swing pon them hearts with the word of the Lord. You're a general, many wanna test, never all gonna put me to rest. General with the bruck of the sword, swing pon them hearts with the word of the Lord. You're a general, a general, a general. Swing pon them hearts with the word of the Lord. You're a general, never all. General with the bruck of the sword. Swing pon them hearts with the word of the Lord. You're a general. Welcome to Sunday school session. Yes, that's where I was guided to start today. And to be honest with you, that's the only notes that I have. I'll give you a little background on the guidance for this session. The last reading I did, I was led to, well, I channeled Acts 2, the passage in the Bible, right? Particularly the story about the day of Pentecost when the apostles spoke in tongues and they were able to speak in languages that everyone present could understand. The premise of it is much different than what it has rounded out to be for today, but it led me on, I guess it led me to here. But I was speaking about just being yourself and how it's important that everybody express the spirit in their own unique way so that not only can you have the privilege of that experience, uniquely, but so that other people can see your uniqueness that may speak to them more than, say, the next man or the next man. Consider there were 12 apostles, and I think the number is, it was something like 3,000 or so people that were ministered to by the way of truth that day because of what they were ordained to do, to speak to them in a way and express to them a word of life in a way that they could understand. That's how I practicalize it. It doesn't mean that you literally speak in tongues in a more practical sense, that you have to do that in order to have a ministry or in order to be any influence in any special way. But it just means that whatever your brand of divinity, is influential enough in its own organic right, and that someone that beholds that brand is bound to be inspired by it in some regard to then create their own and express their own. Okay, so that I believe that's truly the idea of spirituality, even in the most organized religious forms, although it's been bastardized and tainted quite a bit. I think even within Christianity, the idea of the concept of the apostles almost being the original soul group, in that context, because we know that they're older texts than the Bible, but to speak in the context of the Bible, they're like the original soul group or soul tribe, where they weren't family, but the collective of them all together, they became a very unconventional, non-traditional family structure, operating under this creed of faith and this covenant of love, ultimately. Now, to that point, I was guided today that the message was about family, and particularly about divine dynasty. So again, not family in the traditional context, but, well, actually, I wasn't really sure. Let's start there. So when I sat down to begin to channel and to scribe what the message would be, I was kind of stopped short, from the title of Divine Dynasty. And I know why now. It's because, I wanted to go on this trajectory that Spirit just was not willing to go, about family and legacy. And, it was kind of surface in some regard, because in my message as well, that prompted my detour through Acts 2, I was also talking about the royal family and how the nobility has been passed down from generations to generations. And in the practical sense, you can love them or hate them, but there is a reverence and a respect for the crown nonetheless. And then I kind of segued into that in the spiritual sense. And honestly, until I watch back on it, sometimes I swear I don't always catch what I'm saying in real time, because I'm just flowing as I feel guided to do so. And I'm thankful for that, but I am actively in prayer to really hear myself in real time as I'm processing, so that I can speak more to the most contextual expression of what I'm feeling in real time and not have to backtrack or, double back later. But it is what it is. There are no coincidences, and that message was for that day. But today was supposed to specifically be about family. And as I realized, trying to sit down and really write, I wasn't finding myself having a whole lot of amazing things to say about family as I know it, conventionally, traditionally, as a bloodline, a continuance of a bloodline, and then it took me back to, I've already posted Acts 2 on the community tab today because that channel from that message led me to read the scripture. And then this morning I posted it just as, a message on the community tab, not really thinking that it was really going to be any connection to now. Honestly, it was just how I was moved in that moment. But when I really got into the message, what struck me the most in that scripture was the concept of soul family, of soul group, the apostles being the physical representation of that, but then how just in that moment of spiritual expression, they had expanded to thousands, like just the impact of love and light on impressionable hearts and minds can just like spread like wildfire. And before you know it, you got people that are family that really aren't family, and how even with myself, the concept of family has changed so much over the years to something that I was very sure, very certain about, very, dare I say, dependent upon, had a very strong foundation and structure aligned within a covenant of such that was grounded in Christianity and Baptist origins and things of that sort. Very, very religious, not like insanely religious, like over the top, I would say, but definitely a structured order, like go to church every Sunday, probably going to go to church at some point in the week, whether it be choir rehearsal or Bible study perhaps, or, whatever function there was. Like a lot of my life revolved around church as a young person. And then even as I got older, those same constructs kind of followed me, where to some degree I almost fell out of alignment spiritually when I wasn't in some type of ordered practice of sorts, until I was free from that ideal altogether, to know that I am the practice, that whatever it is that I commit myself to and how I devote my time energetically is the worship itself. And for me now, that's an everyday thing. Every time I'm on this platform giving a message, every time I open my mouth to speak, honestly, I know that I'm responsible for my words. Everywhere that I go, I know that my presence makes an impact or an impression, and my intention is to leave every space wherever I go better than what I came. So that's the active, like what I was always taught is that Christianity was a lifestyle. And that one thing I am grateful for is my foundations in the what do you call it? Like the practice of religion in some degree, because although I had to find my own balance in maturation, it gave me a foundation of things that do ring true to me and do make sense and that do add value if they're put in the right context. And Christianity, as it being a way of life, something that you do, not necessarily something that you are. And just the spirit of Jesus being an example of how to be, like the way, the truth, and the life, like how you literally get to live life. Although that gets distorted in the dogmatic dimensions of the order of the religion, for me, it's very pure. Like I took it to heart in a big way, and the only thing that kind of split me apart over the years as I was finding my balance was the constructs of convention that are pit against the truth, more or less plainly what man has constructed as acceptable, and the doctrines of man, moreover, that we use that people use the Bible to uphold and to strengthen or empower, I should say, even. But if not for you having your own understanding and your own relationship with whatever source and force you submit to, and I'm not being exclusive or elite here at all in terms of what you worship or don't worship. This is just my expression, and you should know by now, if you're here, that this is all are welcome, and you are welcome to feel however you feel and see it however you see it. Hell, I'm still learning how I'm seeing it, which is why I feel like I've been coming into this space more as a practice of learning for myself than it is education for anyone else, quite honestly. For me to almost speak the things that, it's like almost like an emptying of my subconscious, I believe, is what it's coming down to. Because there are some things that we just do day to day. For instance, the practice of family values, where you grew up with these people, you do certain things together. There's certain traditions. We all get together on Sunday and have dinner or go to church, and everybody's birthday is an affair, and holidays, it's a no-brainer where you're going to be, who you're going to be with, and life just keeps cycling on day to day, year after year, decade after decade, and you think nothing of it because this is just always what is done until you have some, tower moment of sorts, awakening moment in some regard, as many of the apostles did, and I'll circle it back in a second, that completely disrupts your concept of family in the traditional and conventional sense and disrupts everything about that. And when you think about the concept of Jesus's emergence into the world, just based on the story, you don't have to feel restricted to be a believer or not. This is the story. His emergence into this realm shook up a lot of things, especially when he came into his ministry, quite honestly, because he challenged the status quo. He challenged tradition, convention, the structures of religion. He challenged people's minds and hearts about what they truly believe versus how they lived and what they practiced, and really challenge people to examine what their beliefs were manifesting for them in real time. Like, to really question, is this something truly of value, or am I just doing it because I've always done it? And this is what I've been told to do because my parents told me this is what you do, and their parents told them. And now I'm just here carrying it out as it's been ordained to do so. Everything kind of blew up, when Jesus emerged into the realm as a person, a concept, an idea, an influencer, maybe the original influencer, since we're talking about original soul group and soul tribe, is what Jesus was. And I'll say definitely one of the most powerful ones, maybe not the original, because there, I'm sure, were energies that came before him in some regard. Matter of fact, we know of them. We know even in the Bible that Jesus was the manifestation of generations within the bloodline of David, who certainly within his own right is a powerhouse, So the interesting thing about Acts 2 is that encompassed all of that. It talked about David being a prophet and how David almost spoke the word of the presence of this new age, this new time, and where people would be liberated and the bloodline would be blessed in continuance and eternally, as a matter of fact, and almost spoke a word of protection over divine dynasty as it is. Now, it means something very specific in the David era, because he was speaking specifically about his bloodline by way of blood, But what is expanded from, even in the evidence of the passage in Acts 2, is exactly as I said, that even the apostles weren't family. And as a matter of fact, many of them had left what they were conventionally in contempt of, well, not contempt of, or contained by way of family, by way of their jobs, even their bad habits, like everybody left something behind and ultimately went on this mission to follow their own their own mission of self-discovery, if you really think about it. And that's a lot of times what the pathway of spirituality becomes. There's usually some point where you have a major impactful moment, whether it be circumstantial or you meet someone, or even have like something detrimental happen to you, and it sends you on the path to want to figure out like where am I misguided, where am I misled, or is there a better way, is there a greater understanding, is there something I'm missing, is there something different I need to do? And then lo and behold, the gateway to that journey opens up like, oh, here you are, my child, follow me, in the form of Jesus, as it was with the disciples, where you had the fishermen in the midst of fishing, and on and on and on. I actually don't know all of the stories, but they all had different lives, much different lives than when they encountered the Spirit of Jesus and were incited to do something different, to literally change directions and move in a completely different path. So in that regard, like I said, it was all these aspects that were accounted for, where the disciples left their lives and moved into something new, and it was an unknown path. They had no idea what they were really getting themselves into. If they really had known, most of them would have turned away. But along the journey of self-discovery, they not just learn more about themselves, but they learn more about God and what constructs of God they may have misunderstood or have been conditioned incorrectly to believe. They also learned a different concept of family and order and structure, as much of the lifestyle, the community that Jesus created was very taboo. We know that just by the story, and we're talking about the spirit and the mindset of what was created in the spiritual pilgrimage of sorts that manifested. So, for instance, you had women that were just as influential in some regard, or at least were regarded with respect, and given an equal, more or less, reverence to their masculine counterparts, which was not necessarily the case. There was a clear difference between what was expected of man and woman within the structured order of the religion. So you had that changed and shifted. You had this exuberance of spiritual expression by way of miracles and healings and things that were in some regards unexplainable, by the account of the story itself, that people were becoming healed and liberated in ways that they never believed that they could be, and in that same regard set free to be not just liberated in their physical being, but also accepted again, because a lot of the ailments and things of that time kept people from having acceptance in a religious sense and in a societal sense, where they couldn't even go in certain places or associate with certain people because of their struggles. So there was a liberation there. And then you had what else? I don't know what else, but ultimately these are all the things that were being broken down that had been built up as ways to ultimately conquer and divide the masses, to keep people separate, keep a hierarchy of holiness in some regard, or acceptance in a practical sense, like who deserves what, who's worthy of what, and who's not, who has access even to God or godly things and who doesn't. Like there was very much so a pyramid in that regard, that those that operated in a certain function, usually by bloodline ordinance, whatever tribe that they descended from, and so on and so forth, is what gave them a certain access and value and prestige within the community and within the religion. And those that weren't, even those that were of mixed race, perhaps, that didn't have a pure Jewish bloodline, or, there was some, whatever the case may be, they were on the bottom, i.e. the Samaritans particularly. So basically the New Age idea of family and destiny and divine destiny particularly broke down barriers so that everyone could have a place in the sanctity of their own spirit, that they could literally find home within their own being, within the family that was created in the physical form, and in the family that was being exalted in the spiritual essence. So, I was really thinking about, I was stuck on the whole family vibration in terms of it being more traditional, because I've been more disconnected from my actual family in a while for many of the same ideals. My spiritual journey took me on a path of which I was very, not very resistant at all, at the onset of it, because I was kind of hit with that tower moment of awakening that I spoke about, where it was kind of like, you do this, or it's like do or die type of thing. You could either do this or fall to the wayside. And I could feel that in my spirit. It's something that you can't really explain to people unless they understand. And I know I'm talking to those that get it, when you have that moment where it's like, this is the moment that's changing my life, just like Peter engaging Jesus was the moment that changed his life. He could have continued on fishing, or he could have stepped off that boat and followed his heart. It's that life-changing moment that everyone gets faced with that really invites you to forget everything you ever knew. Even though you don't know that's what it is, when it's happening, that's what it is. So, for me, there's been a disconnection with my family for many different reasons. I don't want to sully the message, because I don't think this is what that's for, on the more lower vibrational energies, as to why that proved to be necessary. In the grand scheme of things, it was for my own self-discovery and to put me in a position to mature and establish independence in my spiritual growth. Whereas before I had the so-called awakening, and I was just, taking baby steps, reading tarot cards and speaking prophetically in the ways that I felt guided to, and just opening myself to other mediums and channels of spiritual expression, even practices in the light and in the highest vibration. No demonic or diabolical stuff over here. Let's be clear. But even the lightest of the light things were causing a friction between my family values, because if anybody knows, if anybody is familiar with the structure of Christianity, that certain things are just a straight up no. Definitely tarot cards being deemed as witchcraft. Definitely, you get a side eye to burn some sage or some Palo Santo, let alone a white candle, or, all of those other things. And then when I felt guided to actually leave my church, my home church, of which I had literally grown up in since a baby, it was like all hell was breaking loose, according to my family. Like, something must be wrong with her in the spirit, So it was a great friction there to find my own space of understanding and growth and stability and security with where I was feeling guided to go and where I had come from, But anybody that is so-called chosen to be themselves in any regard, because that's what it really comes down to. It's like the choosing is you choosing you, you know. It's not so much of being chosen because you're better than anyone or, you know, anything like that, but it's like the Spirit calls out to us all, and some, which is why it says that many are chosen, many are called, few are chosen. There's a call to us all to do something different, to do something out of the box, out of what we've been conditioned to do, maybe in discrepancy with what family values or conventions are, or what societal deems as acceptable. We all get called to do it, to step out of that comfort zone, to speak in tongues in a way that may seem strange to the one next on your right or your left, but speaks directly to somebody out in the crowd that knows, that can relate to you wholeheartedly, you know. But that's the point of it all, that we're being called out of our shell, out of our cookie cutter confinements, so that we can speak to those that need to also come out or want to, and don't really have the influence or inspiration, the courage to do so on their own, or don't even know that such an opportunity or exaltation exists. Don't even know they consider, like with the scripture with Acts 2, and I encourage you to read it. It's on my community tab. But I don't think I'm going to go into the depths of the scripture, because I don't think that's what this is for per se. It's not really a Bible study, I don't think, but that's very heavily what influenced the message. Consider that these were all typed, like I said, these weren't just Jews. These were people from all walks of culture. You know, it lists them in the scripture as, some of them I don't even know. You're talking about like biblical times of cultures, but certainly not of one race or one descent. And if it were meant for only Jews to have received a word of life, you know, in some regard, then it's basically that the floodgates were open for everyone to receive hope and truth and faith in a way that they could fully receive, to grasp it, you know, for it to plant a seed within their being. And so then they would be able to go take that seed and plant it elsewhere in their lineage and create a dynasty and legacy of their own in some regard, right? So it's like, if we're only confined to what we've always been doing and what only is so-called admissible within this box, this frame, then what about those that don't understand that frame? What about those that won't ever even see that frame? Because it says that they began to start speaking, and then it attracted others to that place to hear what they were saying. Otherwise, if they were just speaking in a Jewish tongue, people might have just kept on walking. People might not have heard what they had to say. I liken it even to, you know, I told my parents that I was called to be a light in a dark place, and I stand by that to this day. I know what my calling was in that moment, and it may not always be what it is now. It can change and evolve, and I hope that it does. But if I had resisted that call, like, consider when you hear my messages, I'm not speaking about low vibrational energy 24/7 and, you know, spewing death and negativity. Like, yes, I'm dealing with some tough topics, some of which I can relate to, some of which just come up because that's just what it is. But in every message that I give, I always give it with some inflection of hope and light and faith and love, even the worst of the worst. For me, I feel like it's almost my gift and my curse, bars, that I'm still always able to see some light in the situation, even in some ways when it just ain't none. Like, it's just dark. That's just what it is. It don't even want to be light. Stop trying to shine the light on it. Turn the flashlight off. It wants to be dark. But my come from is to always be shedding light. That's just what I do. So if I had resisted the charge as I felt incited to, because I did actually for a while, I was afraid to even buy cards. I was definitely afraid to do a reading, and I was afraid for anybody that I knew to know that I was doing readings or messing with cards at all, because I was afraid of the scrutiny and the judgment from people, not from God, because I had already reconciled with what I felt called to do, but it was the people that terrified me. You know what I mean? So if I had resisted what I heard in the spirit to do what I ultimately am doing now, I would have missed an awesome opportunity to grow and evolve, because it was my willingness to be open to the spiritual expression in all ways, shapes, and forms, not limited to just the Bible and limited to Christianity in a structured religious form and church and preachers and nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Well, I should say nothing more, that could have kept me confined in the box that I was not designed to stay in. And I know for a fact, just based on the demographic of my subscribers now, when I see different faces pop up in the comments and things like that, I would never touch some of the people that express their connection to what I'm sharing, just in the form of Christian conventionality that I was used to, that I was comfortable in. Some people, when you even start to begin to talk about anything religious, maybe some people already clicked off now, thinking that I'm about to sit here and preach to them about Jesus Christ, when ultimately I have a more universal message to share than that. I mean, not to say Jesus isn't that, because he is that, but it's just the tainting of that essence and that presence that leaves us a bad taste in people's mouths because of exactly what I'm talking about. Feeling that energy of judgment and unacceptance and unworthiness to experience or express yourself in any way except this or that, you know what I mean? Or over there with these people, and not, it's so stringent that, sometimes you can't, with the best of intentions, you can't even really work within it, because people won't even really be able to receive the message for the debris, that ultimately has been left behind or piled on by man, or by people that just either don't know no better, or that actually do know better and use religion as a way to forge contempt and possession over others' spiritual essence, which is a whole nother topic for another day. I don't think I'm being called into that, but one of the prayers and the message in the scripture was David really breaking that off, in a sense, like his prayer that was recited by Peter to the people as they were prophesying, as they were witnessing and preaching and proclaiming and things of that sort, was a reflection of David's prophecy that the bloodline would always be protected. And like I said, it meant something specific then, but even to the apostles, it meant something different to them. And they were closer to David's time than we are, that the family has just continuously grown. And the way in which David may have considered, with his limited scope, even being prophetic, but with the limited scope of the future, for it to cover a certain group of people, here it is that now that had expanded in real time with the apostles ministering to people that had nothing to do with the bloodline. And now it's expanding even now beyond the conventions of so-called religion or Christianity to those that don't want anything to do with it. And I think that's the thing about family in the conventional sense. It's like, just as it is in a practical way as it is in a spiritual way, that there's an invitation to open the mind and the heart to receive family, the extension of family, in a very supernatural way. Like I said, soul group, soul family, soul tribe, that we would all be more at an advantage to be a collective force against the evils and the perils of this world as they are they rise up. Even in David's prayer, it was a protective prayer because it was a rising up even then, a projection of what it may always be and what it certainly is now, that the powers that be evil, ultimately don't want to see a force of evolution within the spirits of people that know exactly how loved and how adored they are in the divine, know their place, know their value. It's like knowing when you go to Thanksgiving dinner, you're going to be welcomed in. Knowing when you go for Christmas, there'll be a gift for you under the tree, under the best circumstances. Everybody's families are different, but that's the best of even my own memories of my family. The friction comes with the idea of belief systems and the limitations, so to speak, of what is righteous and what is not. And I think it's an idea on a very basic level of a conventional and practical level, and on a grand scheme, to begin to open our mindsets to what family truly is and what it looks like. That it's not limited to who looks like you, who acts like you, who believes like you, who expresses themselves like you, who does what you do or has some similar interest, who, God forbid, even has your actual lineage or shares your ancestry. You may have to disconnect altogether from what family is or was in order to truly inhabit a liberation of love in which you will feel that bond, as the disciples did, as the apostles did in that time where they had to leave their conventional family to actually receive the inheritance of a divine dynasty. One way or the other, they couldn't have both in that moment. Maybe they were able to go back and reclaim and reconnect in some regard, but in order for them to have that defining, life-changing experience, they had to break away and trust the spirit that was leading them. So I think it's especially in this time where there's so much energy pit against the evolution of the spirit and humanity evolving into less of a codependent or even dependent energy and more into independence and, dare I say, sovereignty, that even within that sovereignty, we get to create community with other like minds. But it happens, and we are even more sovereign when we're open to do that, because no man truly is an island, right? The sovereignty comes in you having the strength and the courage and the wisdom to make decisions that are best aligned for your supreme self and to carry out the order of that direction without it being influenced or impacted from any large projection or any intimate projection, meaning the family and friends in your close proximity can't sway you in ways that are not in integrity and in alignment with who you are. And on a massive scale, i.e. the global conflicts or national projections of propaganda and news and lawmakers and heads of state and even the neighbors next door that see things in a certain type of way. Like you will be able to maintain a focus and a security in your spiritual foundation, even as you're stable enough to do that within your own right, and still somehow strong enough to be almost a support, more like a generator of truth, because that's what I liken it to, because it doesn't mean that you have to go around helping everybody with your bare hands or with what you may or may not have to spare, whether it be energy or material, but it's like being a generator of truth. In the case of my own experience, it's like I can do better leading the charge of choosing myself, as I've said before, that the chosenness is not about being better than, but when you're choosing the direction that you feel in integrity with, even in the resistance of, the whole entire family, perhaps, I can do more to add value to my bloodline, to my lineage, to my legacy, the divine dynasty that I feel a great devotion to, by standing firm on what I believe in and walking in that light and integrity, than conforming with what I feel would be favorable for all, to going along to get along, or sacrificing what I feel, all right, well, I won't do tarot no more. I'll come back to church. I'll do this, do that. Not to say that anybody necessarily asked me to, but I'm sure in some regard they would love for that to be the case. But then that would be a sacrifice of my truth, and nobody wins in that regard, because that you can't really generate at your highest vibration and your most supreme self doing anything that's out of alignment with the ordinance of that self. It can't be dictated or projected from any other force. It just can't. There can be ideals, there can be inferences, there can even be, opinions that can be taken into account. But when it all comes down to it, we all have the responsibility to follow our own spiritual path, just as it was in the days of the apostles, just as it was for those that they ministered to. It was their responsibility to take that word, let it soak into their hearts, and then do what they would with it. And obviously, they did something, because the gospel of Jesus Christ has spread all over the world, good, bad, or indifferent, tainted as it may be in some regards. It's had a great, powerful influence on the entire globe, So it's like, I feel like we're being called to the purification of our power, and I know that that's what I'm called to be an expression of it. As I said, a generator of pure love. So I had to strip down a lot of the debris that I had accumulated over my life, so that I could, because how could I really work in the effects of bringing light in the spaces of darkness when I'm judging the darkness, like when I'm judging tarot cards, and in my heart of hearts, I feel like they're evil, and anybody that does it is, an abomination to God. And how can I really be of service in truth if that's what's been hiding in my heart deep down in under the surface, So I had to strip down a lot of the unnecessary propaganda and projections, and still stripping. Don't get me wrong. It's the constant work. It may, I don't know, I hope it's not eternal, but it's definitely still active in this moment. But I've had to reconstruct my idea of family, of fortune, of faith, of fortitude, of freedom. How about that? Of liberty in some great regard, in order for my heart to be more open to the spiritual family that has embraced me in a virtual sense, even here on this platform, and the much larger community that I feel called, I feel guided to serve in an even more expansive way, so it's all been baby steps. So family is less conventional than what we've been conditioned for it to be, because we are much less conventional than we've been conditioned to be. We are all taboo in our own regard, and I feel like we're being called, especially given we're in Scorpio season, to really express our purest form of power at this time without apologies, to dig down deep into that raw, energetic force field and kind of let it be liberating, let it be liberated and let it be liberating. If the apostles in that moment have resisted the tongues that had overtaken them because they were foreign, because it wasn't their native language, it was something they had never done before, it didn't feel right, it was something strange, they would have missed an opportunity to speak to the masses that ultimately spread a gospel, a good news throughout the world, that when it's regarded in its purest form, encourages us all to live without limitations. That's the gospel of Jesus Christ, to live without limitations. to be responsible certainly for the power that you wield, but assured in the authority of that power, no doubt. It works both ways, that just as submissive as you are to a supreme source, you still are sanctified by that source as well, because the power works from within. So if you suppress it for fear of judgment or fear of lack of acceptance or scrutiny or rejection or being cast out or laughed at or misunderstood, you miss an opportunity not only to minister yourself in some magnificent way, but also for that light that you embody, that you've been given governing over, to impact someone else in a way that makes all of our lives better. Because get this, if only the apostles would have held on, only 12 of them, consider that, if only 12 of them would have been, and there were more than that at that time, because this was after the crucifixion, so Jesus had already made his rounds by way of the story. But if there were only 12 considered apostles that had the wealth of knowledge and wisdom and truth of this saving grace, that you can live life limitlessly, unlimited by religion, by culture, by society, by family, by foe, that there was literally nothing that could hold you back from an exuberant experience and expression of life force through the fuel of love, which is of a divine, unlimited force. Okay. So if they were the keepers of that knowledge, of which Jesus passed down to them in his presence and essence, where would the world be today? I don't even think it would exist, to be honest. Only 12 people being responsible for carrying that information throughout the entire globe. Well, thankfully, they were impressed with an energy that was foreign to them, that was taboo, that was unconventional, because in that moment they expanded the evangelistic expression of love and light and even luxury, that people were free to now be prosperous and productive in their own right. They spread that multiple thousand times over. If they hadn't had that courage and boldness to express their experience, because that's all they were doing, is expressing their experience, whether it had been of Jesus in connection with their tradition and their scriptures. Dig that, because just as Peter quoted David's prophecy, he was also a living example of something that was completely fresh and new, that in fact hadn't been prophesied before. It had never been prophesied that they would have this moment of speaking in tongues and people's hearts would be changed, and that was unknown. So it's like even opening your heart for experiences to occur that no one has ever truly seen or heard of before, or hasn't been written in textbooks or religious books, and hasn't been spoken per se. Now, it does say, mind you, that, and that the Lord will pour out his spirit. That's part of the scripture as well, and that people will, that I might read that actually, because that's important, that sons and daughters will prophesy and old men will have dreams and so on and so forth. So that's the energy that we're living in now. Honestly, we are the expression of the prophecies of old, where the Spirit of God is being poured out on people that don't look like, or even may not even sound like, they should behold it. And the only resistance is that conditioning, and much of the conditioning is coming from, again, that hierarchy force that really has, in a lot of ways, is ignorant or has no intention for liberation, and uses this order to keep people suppressed and contained. But it's still up to the middleman, that is beholden of the true power and authority and that potential there to do something even grander, to release themselves of those chains, like free themselves from those chains and those blockages, and express themselves freely, so that the message, the experience, the evidence of this exuberance can carry even further. Nobody's coming to the saving grace of limitations. And that doesn't even begot an exuberant life. There's a call for those that have been structured and ordered a certain way to bridge with those that may be fresh and new in some regard, or just new age, like those 3,000+ that learned of Jesus Christ that day. They didn't know, that wasn't their lineage, but they were able to receive that word and magnify the presence of that power beyond what it was contained to be. So if those of us that are truly mindful of creating a world that is safe and secure, let alone actually productive and prosperous, must open our hearts and our minds to receive all walks of life, all expressions, or just let people live and live and let live, because you never know. Just as many characters in the Bible ultimately had some tumultuous past before they came to their awakening, such is the same in present day, where everybody's path is different and nobody can really judge who somebody that might be a murderer today might be a freaking mastermind tomorrow and change the whole course of life as we know it in a positive way. Because of the condition and containment of evil forces in this world, we can't really account for how others are experiencing this life and walking out their journey, because we're all susceptible to that same impression, to that same dark influence. But for the grace of God, there go I, as I say in the song. So take no joy when your enemy dies or lies or cries, because we're all in this same boat together, in this realm together. So yes, it says, let me try to find the scripture now, and I'm going to start wrapping it up. And I thank you, Spirit, for this message, because I don't necessarily know that it went the way that I intended, but I definitely feel the synergy. Let's see. 1 second. Oh, what the hell is this? It took me on something completely different, some ad. Did I lose it? Come on. Hold on. Okay. Beacon Tom, let's see. What's this mean? Peter set up. Let me explain the days. Okay. In the last days, God says, this is Peter speaking. He was actually quoting Joel, prophet Joel, or Joel, however you say it. But there was definitely a quote from David in here too, if I can find it. In the last days, God says, and Joel was a prophet. Did I say that? I think so. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heavens and above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord, and everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. So there you go. And you can take that, you can be resistant to the idea of calling on the name of the Lord in the most practical sense. It's about having a reverence and a respect for spiritual presence, that which works within you and that which governs beyond you, if you see it to be so. If it stops at what works within you or what it is that you are, the most important thing is for it to be of high essence, because that's the ceiling of which you are, and that's your limitation, is basically what I'm trying to say. So it could be anything, quite honestly, but the lower it is, the lesser the value. The higher it is, the more powerful you are. And I don't mean hierarchy like my God is better than yours. I'm talking about individually. The point I'm trying to make is that it's an individual establishment in spirit and in truth. It's not if the Lord and your reference is nature, or it is Jesus, or it is God. It is, now mind you, also like to point out in this scripture that Peter says over and over again that Jesus was a man. So there's even that. Some people idealize Jesus as a prophet that, expressed extraordinary power and authority, and that's why he's a reflective force to us all, because it shows us what we are capable of, what our potential is of limitlessness. Some people think Jesus is a figurative expression. Some people think that it's an energy. It's a what do you call it? It's the expression of astrology in some way. There are different ways, and this, I think this is the summoning summoning Jesus. Yeah, this is the point that I want to surmise, is that it really doesn't matter. That's the age-old argument that we've been having that's been so distracting, is that everybody's so fixated on what God is and what God isn't, and who you call it versus what I call it, and where you go to church, and if you go to church, and how you worship, and so on and so forth, that if we all give each other permission and grace, not even permission, but grace, because nobody really has the right to give anyone permission, but the grace to believe as we will, high, low, anything in between, doesn't really matter. The issue when it comes down to back in Jesus's time is that the so-called Pharisees and religious authorities of that time didn't want to give Jesus the grace to just be him, because his influence was so impactful that they feared that their authority would diminish and their position of power would disappear. They would be rendered useless, or more or less be like, like they would be shown up or rendered obsolete, more or less, in the religious order and structure of things, because Jesus's message was so revolutionary. But if they had kind of got on the bandwagon and pushed the agenda, they probably would have been more empowered in their own positions than it ultimately happened to be, where there was always a contention and where the whole culture struggled a great deal on the loss of that energy. Imagine if Jesus was still walking around today, which, just wait and see. I believe it there. But yeah, just imagine though, and the spirit of the message, if the spirit of that message came about today, even Christians that think that they would have, they killed my Jesus, Christians would deny and resist that presence. If somebody came here incarnated and said, I am he, and it was true, like there was evidence, there whatever, they would resist that just as much as there was a resistance back then. And Jesus was lifting up, healing all the tarot readers, and healing the freaking so-called witches and whatever, like all the wizards was his apostles, and Christians would be mad. They would be so mad. They would turn into the Pharisees and the Sadducees of modern day. So it's like, we got to recognize that the time, the so-called end time is here, but it's not the doom and gloom that we've been conditioned to await for, dare I say, be afraid of. You know what I mean? It's the changing of the guard, us releasing ourselves from the bondage of the establishment and of society as it, in its most diabolical sense. Not community. Community is one thing, family is another thing, but the establishment that ultimately is set to continue the division and the conquer of energetic beings, divine souls, that within this, keeping people distant from their divine inheritance. In spirit and in truth, that's what we are to band together as a united front in family, unconventional family, to stabilize ourselves as a force of resistance unto, not necessarily to be going to, throwing rocks or trying to fight the establishment or, trying to pick fights or start fights. I don't think it's that. It's really for us to stand our ground and on one accord and being unified by love and not dispersed by dissension, and disagreement. That it says that in that scripture as well, that there was a community that was formed on account of those that heard the word that day, and it grew tremendously. It became an extended family, and they helped each other out. If somebody needed help, they sold things. They established counsel and support, and there was unity and community there amongst people that otherwise had no reason to associate with one another. We're being called to that same gathering of hearts and minds and spirit. It just doesn't get to be if we're still stuck in our ways and in our on our established orders of what is right and what is wrong, and too much to allow something different to be a reality, missing our opportunities for a more expansive blessing and an inclusive evolution of sorts, and one in which is much needed by us all, because just as the apostles couldn't do it on their own without the thousands plus that were added unto it, none of us can do it on our own to just chant. We start with ourselves and our own independence for sure, but if you consider the resistance in the world is much greater of a force, at least quantitatively, than the defense of the divine is. Now, the quality is a different story, because the quality of the power there is unmatched. But we gain more on our side and more of a united front when we open our hearts and our minds to receive all those that have a mind, a heart, and a willingness to live abundantly, to live limitlessly, no matter how they see it, how they idealize it, what they call it, what they fantasize it to be, what they figure it to be, what facts they have to support or don't. Like, God is an experience. It's not to be explained, as my good spiritual leader that helped liberate me even in the religious form. Shout out to Pastor Mike Walrun, First Corinthian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York, who was the first theologian to open my eyes within the structure of Christianity and religion, one of the most gifted theologians in the world by my standards, and my standards are high, trust me. Not only in his expression of the text and, the education of biblical terms and theology, but also in his life expression, just the way that he encourages a community of freedom and liberty and acceptance. Matter of fact, the mission of the church was, we are an ever evolving community of visionaries, dreamers, and doers who have been called by God to live the lives we were created to live, commanded by God to love beyond the limits of our prejudices, and commissioned by God to serve. Live, love, serve is the creed, was the creed, will always be the creed as far as I'm concerned. And talk about an inclusive ideal. There's no one left out. There's no one excluded. There's no one higher than the other. We are all called to live, love, and serve in every capacity, in every way of creativity, expression, intellect, all of it is valuable in the kingdom of love, as it is here on earth, as it is also in heaven, or beyond this tangible place. Okay, so I think I'm gonna leave it there. It definitely took a heard, I felt guided with this general song. And I know why, because it still challenges, the song challenges your mind to think outside of the box of what you consider to be family, that sometimes family ain't family. And if you're feeling stretched between these ideals of, feeling an obligation to a certain person, place, thing, construct, even religion, or any type of structured order of community that your heart is not in alignment with, you do better seeing the truth, having an awakening and not awakening, but acceptance of the truth of yourself within that space. Again, choosing you as you've already been called and chosen. You have to it's still on you to do the choosing of yourself, to say that if it calls for me to do something unconventional, to have the fullest expression and experience of life, then I'm willing to do that. And if any of or all of the things in this song ring a bit of truth for any establishment of order that you have aligned yourself with, that's the first invitation to release yourself. And if you gotta be on your own, so first, it happens that way most often anyway, but there's certainly hope for you to find your way back into that sanctity of community and acceptance, where you are truly loved and valued and held sacred and secure above all things, in spirit and in truth. So I hope that for you. I certainly hope that for me. I'm definitely open to the unconventionality of family and friendship and business, intimacy, professionalism, everything, creativity. Like I pray for my mind to be completely blown out the box of anything that would keep me confined, so that I don't miss a thing and I don't miss anyone that I'm supposed to connect with or inspire, or that's supposed to inspire me for that matter. So literally, for that spirit of the matter. So I pray the same for you. Open your heart and mind to receive something of yourself that may be a little bit different than what you've known and loved, or been even conditioned to love and understand, for something that may be a little bit strange and unconventional, a little bit taboo perhaps even, but just know that whatever it is, if it's expressed in integrity and honor and love and truth, that it is accepted in the spirit as such. You are welcomed in the space of love and worthy to inhabit it just as much as you are responsible to release it. It is so, and so it is. All right, so that's it. I hope you got something out of this session. I really do. Thank you for listening. I'm always, a little bit nerve-wracked about how the message comes forth for on Sundays, because it's very important to me how I communicate and how it is received. Well, not so much received, but that I communicate as clearly and concisely as possible, because whatever is to be received, just like the apostles, whatever you're supposed to hear is what you heard. I can only speak with the tongue I was given. But I do thank you for listening and considering the concepts that I've shared today. I wish you all the love, light, and luxury in your life to close this weekend, and certainly to start a prosperous and productive week ahead. Saturn has gone direct in Pisces, so the limitations, I probably should have checked. It came out in the reading in a figurative way, but the limitations on life as we have known it over this retrograde are beginning to lift slowly but surely, because Saturn is a slow planet. So you should start to feel a bit more free, even within this full moon energy, to really express that raw energy and that raw power that Scorpio has just been dying to explode out of you. So allow yourself to do it. As long as you ain't hurting nobody and you ain't hurting yourself, you're probably creating yourself to be a great inspiration in some regard for someone else to let go and be free as well. So do it with the greatest of integrity and inhibition and have fun above all else. Okay, so again, have a great week to start, and I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully you will too. But in the meantime, I leave you as always with peace.